I recently got to play in the 59th Annual American Open, specifically the action section, which is really just a one-day tournament, a side event of the American Open, in which case you have a one-day event, 5 rounds total, and it's a quicker time control than usual, right? A lot of games, when you're looking at tournament chess, serious tournament chess, you're looking at 4, 5, 6 hours of play. But in this event here, we got delay 5 with only 30 minutes on the clock, which, it might sound like a long time, 30 minutes and delay 5, especially to those of you that play Bullet and Blitz online. I'll tell you this, when I'm playing online, I get bored with 3-minute chess. I do. When I play 5-minute chess, I get bored. But when I'm playing in person, I don't get bored at all with those time controls. I really don't. And, 30 minutes, it goes faster than you think. And, I think a big part of that is that there's more on the line. Right, you're playing in a tournament game. You want to play the best chess that you can, and you just want to do well, right? You want to do well. So in this tournament here, it's 30 minutes delay 5. So you do have some time to calculate. You do, but you gotta really use your time efficiently. You got to use your time well. You don't want to spend too much time on non-critical positions because you want to have time later on to really calculate things through. So in this first game here, I see the move upon to e4, and I play this move upon to g6. So today's video, we're actually going over 2 games, both of which are Hippos, and in tomorrow's video, we're going to be going over 2 other Hippo games as well. For the tournament overall, I ended up getting 4.5 out of 5 and tied for first. The 4 games that I won, I played the Hippo. The 1 game I didn't, I got a draw. So there you go. But here in round 1, I play the move upon to g6, bishop g7, d6. 1, 2, 3. That's how I start my games. And in this case, bishop takes f7. We don't got to be worried about it. We capture back with the king. If check, we go right back. And if you want to play queen f3, we'll develop our knight. That's okay. We're not in the Hippo structure anymore, but we're up a piece for a pawn. We're okay there. We're winning. And if a move like knight e6, we just take it right off the board. Here's the thing, though. Right, white here played the move of c3. White didn't do that. But here, if I did play knight d7, I am dead losing. Dead losing. If you play this kind of position, if you play a modern or a Peertz, and you play this kind of position out, before bringing your knight to f6, guys, stop, please. Don't do these 4 moves when you see a bishop on c4 and a knight on f3, because bishop takes f7, white is winning. If you move your king, you're down a pawn. Your king's on f8. And your f7 pawn doesn't exist. If you take, even worse, knight g5 check. If we go back to f8, knight e6, guess what? We're losing our queen. King e8, knight e6, our queen cannot even move. We're losing our queen. Notice that knight's in the way of the bishop now. And if king f6, check. I can move my king up to e5, but then d4, game over. And I could take, but again, d3 or d4, and this game is going to wrap up very quickly with my king being on h4. So taking a step back, you can play d6 first, right? You don't have to play e6 right when you see the move of bishop to c4, right? I didn't have to play e6 right now. But the big deal is that you play e6 before you play knight d7. That's very important in this kind of line. So c3, I play e6, shutting that bishop down. In this case, h6, knight e7, b6, and bishop b7, right? Bishop to b7. So just continuing with my Hippo type setup, a4, a6, whole idea there. If you want to push, I'll bounce back with b5. I have to have these 2 pawns ready to really match a5 well. And b4 is played. In this case, knight d7. Queen c2. Now we have our full thick-skinned Hippo. 6 pawns on the 6th rank. Both knights on e7 and d7, and our bishops are both fianchettoed. The question now is, okay, what do we do? Right? What do we play here? How do we view a position like this? Now, there's a lot of moves here that are actually pretty playable. What I will say is that e4 is a much bigger weakness for white than d4, because d4 is defended by a knight, bishop, and most importantly, a pawn. A pawn is the best defender in chess because it is expendable. The pawn on e4, no pawn defends it. You have a knight and a queen. So in this case, I ended up playing the move of knight to f6. Now, according to the engine, that's not the best move. Castling here is a good idea. Castling is a good idea. a5 is a good way to kind of, put a little bit of pressure on white's queen side. D5 is a move that the engine looks at, but here in this case, I play knight f6, and I don't regret it, right? This fits my playing style in the hippopotamus defense, and when you're playing the Hippo, don't worry too much about the eval, right? You want to worry about it a little bit. If you're making a move and you're losing 1, 2, 3 points of eval, then you got to really look, but overall, figure out what you like to play. Come up with your own style of play. When you're playing practical chess, doesn't matter what the engine says, really doesn't, because players make mistakes and players get uncomfortable in positions and players get comfortable in positions. So I think the Hippo is a good way to take people out of their comfort zone and into yours e5 is played here, pushing, and I ended up rerouting to d5. This is how I usually play it. If they push, I'll go to d5. And white can take, which is what happens, but we capture back. And this is great for us. Now, if white does push and takes on d6, we capture back, and we feel very secure here. Our queen is defending d6, it's defending b6. And we also have this c8 file to work with. We can drop a rook or a queen there, or both, and we have a lot of activity. White, on the other hand, in this kind of case, they have the e file opened up for themselves, but our pawn's still on f7, and we feel relatively solid here. Okay, we have a nice long pawn chain, and we're good to go. Keep in mind, just relatively speaking, right, going back to knight f6, if you see d5, you don't want white to take. Of course, in this case, there's a bishop there, but the king doesn't defend these pawns well, but the queen defends these well. So if you see d5, you might even want to memorize this if you're a Hippo player. If you see d5, lock it up. If you see e5, think about it. Oftentimes, d5 is not the right move. But in this case, okay, e5, I ended up rerouting my knight, capturing back, and here I castled kingside, and I played queen c7. Now, rook c8 is the engine move here, and it makes sense, right? Rook c8. I didn't want to leave this pawn, so early. I didn't want to do that, but turns out we're totally okay here. I mean, if a move like queen d3 targeting it, we can take on c3. If a move like h3, yet again, we take on c3, and we're going to finish out by playing d5, attacking the pinned bishop, capturing off. The knight leaves. Guys, the bishops in chess are the soul of the hippopotamus defense. Always keep an eye out for your bishops. I see a lot of Hippo players just kind of forgetting where their bishops are at and really how many squares they're attacking. Oftentimes there's a hanging piece. Oftentimes there's a way to mess your opponent's pawn structure up. This being one of them. Take on f3, play a move like knight d5, and white here, right, has... Okay, sure, b4 and a4, solid pawns just like ours, but what else do they have? Isolated pawn, double isolated pawn, double isolated pawn, isolated pawn. What's white doing? I don't know. Black's a lot better. Ideas like queen h4 on the way. But in this case, I played the move queen c7. Still a good move. Not quite as good, according to the engine, as rook c8, but queen c7, still solid. I see the move b5, and... guys, when we're playing the game of chess, it sounds simple, and it is when you think about it this way. Of course, it's a lot harder to actually apply, but one thing you want to think about, any move you make in chess, you're trying to activate your pieces, you're trying to improve your position, you're trying to prevent a weakness on your side, you're trying to take advantage of a weakness on your opponent's side. But generally speaking, when we're playing chess, we want to improve our piece activity and not let white improve theirs. So when we're looking at this and we're thinking about, should I take or should I push? Well, a lot of Hippo players might just think, well, let's lock it up, right? The Hippo always locks up, right? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It depends. Like in this case, if we push to a5, does white's activity change? No. None of their pieces are better or worse because of that. But are any of our pieces worse? Yeah, our rook's kind of just stuck. But if we take on b5, which is what I played, and white captures back, the bishop didn't take back because of the pawn on c3 that we're really looking at. In this case, did white's pieces improve at all? No, none of white's pieces got better from that. The bishop's not more active, the knight's not, the queen, none of them. But are any of our pieces better? Yep, the rook is. The rook's a lot better. And it's eyeing nothing, which is good. It has full control of the file. I'm able to jump that rook, throw it into a3, attack that pawn twice. White here ends up playing the move of queen to b2. If a move like knight b1, for example, attacking my rook, defending the pawn, my plan was just to bring this rook back to a5. Bring it back to a5. Solid square. White can't kick it around anymore. The knight is out of position to get to b3. And we're just continuing to improve our pieces, add the pressure, all that kind of good stuff. Queen b2 is played, though, and I ended up playing rook takes c3, rook c1, and I trade off. Now, here I could have played the move rook c8. I was looking at it. That's the engine line, and it makes sense. I mean, if this bishop moves anywhere, including taking our knight, we're just going to take on c1 with check, and I mean, we're better here, obviously. But the reason I didn't play rook c8, I take the approach that if I'm up material, even if I'm up one pawn, guys, I don't play risky. And I saw here that, maybe there's some tactics down the line here that could be annoying. I'm just going to play safe here. I'm going to play queen d7. I'm not saying play timid to a fault. I'm just saying if you're up a pawn, you're winning. Most of the time, at least, right? Unless it's like on purpose and they're getting all this counterplay and all these attacking chances. In this case, I just won a pawn, and I don't think white really got anything out of it. In that case, I am winning. Just got to play solid. Don't lose material. Don't get checkmated. You'll win. That's generally what I follow. So I play queen d7. Knight e4 is played. This is a blunder. again, guys, the bishops, it's hard for your opponents to see it. It can be hard for Hippo players to remember just how strong their bishops are, but your opponents, they don't even play the Hippo, probably. And there's a good chance they've never even seen it. So they're really going to be unprepared for the Hippo. In this case, I'm able to play knight takes e3. And, the whole idea there is that if white wants to take back, I take your knight. I'm up more material. Here, white ends up going to knight takes e6. I capture back. F takes e3, rook c8. Looking to pin that bishop to the rook on c1. And I guess it's not really a pin technically because the rook's defended. But, just adding more pressure to the white camp. Queen f2 is played. Bishop d5. I'm up material here. I'm up a piece. Let's start trading down. Knight e5 is played. All right, let's trade. Let's take. Let's capture again with the queen. We're up a piece and a pawn now. Rook f1. I end up playing the move knight f5. Now, sure, I can start thinking about bishop takes c4. This is winning. But queen takes f7. That doesn't look safe. Why would I risk anything, guys? I'm up a piece and a pawn. There's nothing to risk here. If I'm down material or if it's an even game, that's where you got to start thinking about it. But in this case, what's a safe move? What's a move that just helps us improve our position a little bit? Knight f5. Right, that's one of them. There's a bunch of others if you had another one in mind. But knight f5, right? Boom. We're good. Bishop takes d5. I end up capturing back with the pawn. And from here, there's not too much to cover from this point. Just overall endgame chess. What I will say is that when you have an endgame like this, don't be in a rush. Again, don't be in a rush. You have the advantage. Just keep slowly making progress. Right? You don't need to checkmate the king right away. You don't need to promote in 2 moves. Just keep slowly inching towards your opponent's side. By the way, in that case, king e3 would have been checkmate. Okay, so king g1 is played. Knight c5, and we continue here. And from this point, I stopped taking notation because in tournament chess, at least in USCF, once you or your opponent gets under 5 minutes on the clock, you don't have to keep taking notation. And I thought at this point, I'll be honest, when I'm playing my chess games, I am thinking about videos. I am thinking about, trying to give you guys the best content I can. And I was like, you know what? I think this is a fine place to stop. So I stopped taking notation. But yeah, black is obviously winning that position there. Look, y'all, here's the deal. I'm offering a 30% off discount code for my Hippopotamus Defense course that's over 6 hours in length, as well as my other online chess courses that's only good until the end of this year. If you're interested in getting 30% off on the Hippo Defense course over 6 hours in length, the Czech Pierce Defense course over 6 hours in length, the Ponziani opening course over 4 hours, or how to crush the Scandinavian defense over 4 hours. When you combine all that together, we got over 20 hours of content. If you're interested in one or any of those courses and you want 30% off, go down to the description below. Go down to the pinned comment, click the link, and from there you can plug in the discount code 2024. If you do that, you will receive 30% off on your purchase as long as you plug in 2024 when it's actually 2024. So round 1 in the books. Round 2, I'm now playing as white and I play the move G3. 1, 2, and 3. That's how I start my games off. 1, 2, 3, prioritizing kingside development. Not the only way you can play the Hippo. In fact, when I was first starting to play the Hippo, I actually was playing this move of B3, and there's a lot of Hippo players that start out with a move other than G3. There's a lot of ways you can get into it. Playing as black, you can start out with a French defense and then get into the Hippo. I mean, there's so many ways, but I like prioritizing kingside development, E6, E3, right? In this case, I play knight E2, guys. It's very important. This is a common mistake that I see. Guys doing stuff like this, pawn to B3. Here's the issue. You want to really prioritize one side first, because if you don't, if you play B3 here, check, sure, you can play bishop D2, but then you're out of your Hippo. You can play C3, but then you're out of your Hippo. You can block with the knight, but then C3 is uncovered. And, bishop C3, there's not even technically black's best move, but this is annoying. This whole idea of the black bishop being able to come in and wreak havoc, it's not fun. It's not fun. So if this is happening in your games, it's probably because you're not prioritizing one side first. So in this case, I'm not worried about any of this. I'm really not. I'm worried about developing this side of the board, right? This side of the board, right? I'm including D3 in that. I'm including D3, but really you're looking at the king side. So I play knight E2. Now, when I play the move B3, if black wants to check, I block. C3 is covered. That's the whole idea there. So play B3. Castle kingside, bishop b2, knight bd7, knight d2, the drill here. And I thought about this move e4, and that's, a really good move here. Kicking that bishop around, we can capture back with the pawn, play knight f4, go after that bishop on g6. White here with a very playable game. But I ended up going, you know what? I'm just going to play h3. I'm going to play into the hippo all the way, play that move h3, and h6 is played. Now here I don't play a3 because there's this pawn on c5, and the only reason in that kind of case to play a3 is to prep c4 without worrying about a knight jumping in. But there's no knight on c6, and there's a bishop on d3, so this pawn is staying put, right, because of that bishop there. You see a bishop attacking your pawn, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. You see a bishop attacking e3, don't even think about f4. And, you know, usually a3, right, you're looking to play b4, you're looking to all that kind of stuff, but there's a pawn on c5, so that's why I don't go with a3 there. I castle kingside, I play g4, kicking that bishop around, I end up tucking that knight, you know, here I think maybe a move like a4 could be good. That's a good move to just take some space on the queen side, but I ended up just tucking the knight, and the very next turn, playing queen e2, d4 is played. I don't have to push here. I don't have to. In fact, f4 is a strong move for white, but I ended up pushing this pawn. And what we have now are, you know, really a pyramid of pawns, all aimed towards f5. That's what you want. You want unison in your games, where you have pawns aimed towards either f5 or aimed towards c5. In this case, based on the pawn structure, I really have my pawns facing towards f5, and we see that pay off. My opponent plays e5. Makes sense. They're probably not wanting to allow me to play f4 unprohibited, just taking space, wiping out 5 squares with our pawns on the 5th rank and looking towards f5, g5, e5. So we see e5. That's the best move black can make. I throw my knight into f5 though, right? There's always pros and cons to a move you make. Any move you make in chess, you do attack new squares, but there's other squares that you attack that you no longer do, right? That's the whole idea. So at least when you talk about the geometry of the chessboard. I play knight f5. Black ends up capturing off, and I thought a little bit here, like, do I take with the g-pawn, do I take with the e-pawn? And I came to the conclusion that, you know what, I've taught this so long, I've talked about it with students, I've talked about it in my course, you know, I was a little bit, like, perplexed. Maybe I should take with the g-pawn there and get the g-file, but it's like, no, in this situation, you want to take away from the center, almost every time. And in this case, that was the engine move. After that move, we have a solid advantage. The reason for this is that we get the e4 square to throw a knight or a bishop into, whereas if we take with the g-pawn, I'm not really going to call g4 a square that we could take advantage of, but if we take the e-pawn, boom, we have that square. Top of that, this bishop is very active. That might even be more important than having that e4 square available. And finally, if you take with the g-pawn, this pawn stuck, this pawn stuck, this pawn, you can't really break anything open. But if you take with the e-pawn, you can still break things open on the king side. So even though this might not seem as aggressive against the king, oftentimes it's more aggressive. It gives you more potential to break open that king side. b5 is played. I play a4. This is a hard position for black to be in. I mean, if you advance your pawns, it doesn't always mean that you have good space. You're making space on the queen side here, but it's not good space for black because it just kind of withers out. There's not much black can do about it. In this case, queen b6 is played in the game. But let's say black takes. Well, we play rook takes a4. When we're talking about potentiality, when we're talking about potential pawn breaks here, this pawn cannot move. This pawn, it's going to be tough. You have no pawn supporting that push, most importantly, and we have 4 pieces attacking that. c4, we got 5 pieces on that. And again, you have no pawns that can ever support this, unless, of course, this pawn somehow takes 2 things off the board. So these pawns are just stuck. They don't have potential here. They really don't, right? So again, going back to b takes a4, that's not going to get the job done. We're winding back to a4. If b4, same kind of deal. You have space, but who cares? Now you just got a bunch of big old weaknesses. We can play rook ae1. We can bring our bishop back to c1, knight c4. Just keep improving our position, slicing and dicing with those bishops. And this bishop on e7 is horrendous. And going back to a4, if a6, bishop b7, attacking the rook, attacking the pawn, snatch that thing off. You had support, but you don't anymore. So a4 is played, queen b6 is played, and I just capture off the pawn on b5. Black, could take here, in which case I would capture back on a7. Black ends up bringing their queen back to c7, knight c4, just continually improving our pieces. We're up material here. Just keep activating, keep activating. I don't want to lose this pawn, right? I don't want to lose that. We could play bishop c6. We could play this move of rook a5. That's what I went with. Very, solid rook. It's not going to get kicked around by anything. No pawn can kick it out. The bishop maybe at some point, but it's going to take some time. So I play rook a5, knight b6. I take on e5. That knight left that pawn back, and we end up capturing on d5 there. Queen takes e5 is played. Now here, I thought about knight takes e5. That works. There's 2 ways to get a winning position there. This is one of them. The whole idea being that you're going to fork both rooks, and You know, the reason I didn't do it is bishop d6, I take back. I know I'm winning this position, but it's like, why allow counterplay if I don't need to? You know, the knight's getting busy. If I defend the pawn, then discovered check. Of course, we're still winning, but why allow counterplay? So I ended up going bishop takes 7 with check and then taking. Bishop d8 is played here. I actually didn't even think of that move. It was a solid move for black, the best move according to the engine, but I was just thinking about rook back to f8. But bishop d8 is played, and I ended up playing rook a6. Now I'm all about trading down, but I did like the activity of this rook, and I ended up throwing a knight into c6. After rook a8, we see capturing on d8. I play rook fa1 going after that pawn. Rook a8, b6, breaking things open like crazy. The rook comes to d7, b6, just breaking things open. And I end up going after that king. I'm threatening a mate in 1, so like, let's see, play knight b4 or something. Game over. G5 is played. I ended up throwing in a check, another check, another check, another check. And, I was just chasing that king around a lot. But guys, one thing to think about, chess isn't when you're attacking the king. It's not all about let's chase and chase and chase and chase. Sometimes it's about let's not let the king run at all, right? If we're playing tag, by the way, let me know your peak miles per hour when you're running down below. But if we're playing tag, you might be able to outrun me. You might be able to, but if you get kind of stuck in one spot, you can't really run. That's the whole point, right? So in this case, I could throw in a check, but then the king keeps running, and then from that point, I actually can't keep chasing the king anymore. Let's prevent this king from running at all, and then look to deliver this. Now we have a mate in 1 threat. If a move like knight c3, bishop c1 would be mate. So in the game here, we see the move of knight e3 check. I take back, and after d takes e3, which wasn't played, black resigned there. Instead of taking, I have 2 mates in 1, rook e4 or bishop e5. So there, black resigns the game. Hope you enjoyed these, and we'll be back tomorrow. Round 3, I played the Hippo defense. Round 5, I played the Hippo. Round 4, I played against a 2270, and I played the Van Geet opening. So tomorrow we're just going to be focusing on the Hippo. So we'll be focusing in on round 3 and 5. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content like this, and hit that notification bell just so that you don't miss out on anything coming y'all's way. Peace. Guys, I hope y'all enjoyed today's video. And just a quick reminder that in addition to the 30% off all online courses sale this month, we wanted to also give a 20% off sale on our physical merch all December. We got shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more on the merch shelf below, and we got a lot more on the website. So check them out and use the code WINTER20 for 20% off. On top of that, I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of December in 2024. I appreciate you guys a ton. It's been great getting to know you. And I'm just humbled by your support. And if you guys haven't thought about joining the Patreon community before, there's some exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member. And I look forward to seeing you over there on the platform. Peace.